Here we are again.
Do y'all think these match our personalities? Mine's bland.
Interesting tank.
Bland.
Red.
Cherry pop,
J-pop.
little flavor.
Where'd you get these, Dylan?
Whole Foods.
Is Vina, what is Vina? Vina is, it's either wine. It's gotta be wine. I'm pretty sure it's wine.
Like vino is Italian for wine.
Vina's gotta be something along the lines of
Maybe they explained it on the
Vines.
can. No, I didn't read
Brilliant from brain to belly.
ooh, prebiotics
that.
and fiber. Okay. Oh, this is like
Hey,
a,
look, it's got both of the things that you're looking for.
it does. This is like a, what are those other ones?
Yeah, easy for us to say.
That everybody drinks. What are the ones?
Olipop.
Olipop. Shout out to Olipop. It's amazing.
It's pretty
that
good.
All these companies are doing this.
Getting
It's
all my
good.
probiotics and my fiber.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dylan.
Awesome.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, thanks, Dylan.
What a treat.
Yeah, I didn't know Dylan was bringing us all drinks. He walked in with 3. I really walked in with 2, and I was like, "Oh, we doing 2 episodes or what?" And he was like, "I got 3 actually." I was like, "Okay." Remove and recycle me. Jimmy, you missed our talk about the world of food and processing food, and we talked
Ooh.
about milk that hasn't been pasteurized, getting milk that hasn't been pasteurized. You ever had it?
I have.
I haven't. I'm the only one that hasn't. Did you like it?
It tastes raw in nature, but it was good. What creeps me out about the whole non-pasteurized stuff is like the head of like all the foam and stuff that's on the top. Like just something about it I couldn't get with, but my wife loves it, right? Maybe it's
Interesting.
the Idaho and her her background, you know? But she's like, this is so good for you. My kids loved it as well. Not a big milk drinker, but I had to jump in and try that. But it was good.
Interesting. Isn't that the cream? Isn't that the whole purpose of, or the whole like source of the cream rises to the top kind of deal?
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. So you hate the best part.
I mean, I'm a cappuccino guy, so I do like a little foam, you know, like
Yeah.
even on a coffee or something like that. But just knowing that that's where it all is sitting for me when it actually pours out didn't seem that appetizing.
Interesting.
But it tasted good.
Okay. Well, I need to do it. We talked about there's a Amish group, like, or there's like you can like subscribe to Amish farms and they'll just like deliver that stuff to you.
It would be great in your mustache too.
Heck
I mean,
yeah.
you have the perfect mustache
perfect
setup
mustache.
to really
Little spotty, little spotty.
to have a moment with it when you drink it.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
So
We're going to see Braden on an Amish commercial soon.
you never know, dude. You never know.
Could be.
I'm on the up and up here on the TV game. Anyway, oh man. Well, Jimmy, we haven't had you on in a while.
I know, it's been a while. It's good to be back. Thank
Yeah.
you.
How are you?
I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good. Living life to the fullest.
That's
Getting
good.
busier.
Yeah.
That's, I guess, okay. I'm in the opposite. I've been telling everybody that through like August and half of September, I was just working my tail off. Like, it was stupid, the amount of work I was putting in. Ended up getting it all delegated. And now, like this week, I just haven't done anything. Like, I sat outside and read books, and I was like, this is weird. Feels wrong.
Didn't feel like you're nurturing yourself though.
It does feel like that. It does feel like that. But it feels like it's I have the do something syndrome. I feel like I should be doing something, and I can't justify that I am doing something by doing nothing. You know? But
Play the rest note, bro.
play the rest note, is that like a
It's a musical
guitar
term,
thing?
but in music, if there were no rest notes, it'd be way less enjoyable. Let's make it simple. Like, you know, you got to have like the.
You know what's so funny about that? Is I think
You
there
gotta
is
stop.
music that doesn't have that, and it's the stupid thump thump music. That like
Stupid thump thump. Okay,
Oh.
describe.
The music that's like bwah, 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 and it like peaks, and then it's just like you know, and it's just like it never calms down. It's just like, let me take you to the next like thing. You know what I mean? Is that what you're talking? Those things need rest notes. Those things just need like
Not quite.
no.
No, even technically in there, there's rest notes.
Is there?
Are you talking about like EDM or dubstep?
Yeah,
and
yeah,
stuff?
yeah, yeah.
Okay, so where it's like one that always comes to my mind is a Skrillex song where it's like, "Mom, oh my God," like
There's like a pause.
there's a pause,
yeah.
and
Maybe
that
just
pause
that's
makes
enough.
that part that comes next just that much more intense.
Interesting.
So play the rest note. Your muscles only grow when they're at rest. There you go. There's a
I
different
like
one.
that. That's all good justifications.
Yeah. So the rest
Kind of
note's
like the
important.
design, right? Like we sleep, what, a third of our lives or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do you need the rest?
I'll rest when I die. That's what they say. That's all the hustlers. It's just hustle culture, I guess. You know, I look around and everybody's like, yeah, I'm just hustling every day, just trying to grind and
But are they?
making all these moves. I don't know.
It's like this really, really like cool thing to seem super busy, right?
It is.
And I see this shift in the culture now, especially with a lot of people that I talk to. It's like, I'm intentionally scheduling time, right? And it's like, time to do what then? Like you said, maybe it's read, maybe it's fulfill,
yeah.
you know, yourself in different ways.
Yeah.
You know, maybe it's massage or exercise or whatever, but it's now a thing to schedule opportunities to rest.
It's so weird to me.
Why?
I don't know. I'm a. Do you use your calendar? Or do you calendarize?
Every day.
Do you calendarize
Yeah.
roughly? I don't.
Big things
I
only.
early on, I caught wind of a video, and it was of Bill Gates talking about his friendship with Warren Buffett. I don't know if you guys know that.
I've watched this.
About his calendar.
Yes.
Exactly. So for Dylan, it's so interesting. He's talking about meeting with Buffett, and they're having a conversation about calendarizing things and filling up the calendar. Bill Gates is like, yeah, you know, my calendar is booked minute by minute, every single day. Like every single thing is planned out.
Makes
He
computers
says, I
make
asked
sense.
Warren if I could look at his calendar, and there was nothing on there but like a birthday for like the month. And he was just like, I don't know if people are wired different or if culture has told us to calendarize. I don't know. I don't know. And I continually let people down. Like my life is defined. My life is defined by text messages that randomly come to me that are like, "Hey, are you hopping on?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, of course, man. Sorry, I'm there." And never on my calendar. Absolutely never. Literally 0% of the time.
It's so funny. So I think the reason that I calendarize is that I feel like I have a responsibility to the people that are on my teams and the people that I work with to be accountable.
Yeah.
I do get those text messages as well, like, hey, are you joining this call now, right? Because I don't add everything to the calendar. I have invested in a phenomenal assistant who's starting to help support that. But
Good for you.
the way that I've worked around that is I give everyone in my circle access to my calendar.
Yeah. Where they can all see what's happening and they can drop on it and
That way I don't screw it up. Now I put everything on my calendar. Like
Yeah.
if I plan to go meet my wife for lunch, I put it on there. If I've got a tire appointment, I put it on there, right? And I still, there's blank spaces and stuff, right? Freedom in there. But I would rather everyone in my like immediate ecosystem just understand where I'm at and how I operate.
I think that's good. I think what happens is people end up making that an ego thing, where it's like, yeah, now my calendar's shared with a lot of people, they can see it. I want them to think that I want them to see the cool things I'm up to, how busy I am, how much I work, how hard I work. And so it becomes like a pride element where it's like, yeah, my calendar's full.
Yeah, that's not what I use it for. I think, you know, it goes back to what I've said before, which is availability is a currency, right? Like I
Yeah.
think you still make time to be intentional to interact with people. So you're creating spaces to be available. And that doesn't mean that it's not movable for me. Like just because it's on the calendar doesn't mean that I may not send a message or say, hey, I need to reprioritize something on here. Can I move this or whatever? Right.
interesting.
And a lot of times I do that because the people that are in front of me or the opportunities that are set in front of me just require more time than I think, right? I budgeted 45 minutes and I'm like, this is going to be a 2-hour meeting. I can just tell it is. And I need to just let the other people know, hey, I'm not going to be available for a couple of hours.
Interesting. What about, I just thought of this term, intentional availability. So rather than just availability, having blanks in the calendar, the intentional availability. And when I think of that, I think of like this podcast. I have nothing on my calendar. My calendar, if you guys look at it, pretty much blank. The meetings that are on there don't exist anymore. It's just whoever started them didn't erase them, and I don't erase them either because I don't mess around with my calendar. I'm here every Friday making the podcast, right? And I don't schedule things in the middle of making the podcast. It's like an intentional availability that I don't even have to look at my calendar or have in the back of my mind, like, am I available or whatever? It's just like, nah, that's podcast time. Like, I can't do something then. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's almost like setting your priorities. Like, where are the priorities at that you don't have to calendarize?
I like that. What are those things for you, Dill?
The gym.
Yeah.
People will say, when do you go to the gym? And I'm like, usually sometime between 8 and 5. That's the truth.
You don't have a set time?
No. And is there one that's really better than the other? No. Some people say, oh, get up, get your grind in first, make it happen. You know you're going to feel great the rest of the day. Maybe. Maybe. Go back to the Chinese farmer. I know we ended on that last week.
Yeah.
You heard the pocketful proverb about the Chinese farmer?
No, fill me in.
Okay.
Oh, dude.
For everyone that's here, we'll go through it quickly. Old China, there's a farmer and his son. They're working the farm. One day, all these wild horses appear. And they're like, oh my gosh, this is so great. And so they just open the gates and all the horses come in and the townspeople go, hooray for you. You got all these wild horses and now this will be helpful to your farm and your family. It'll be so good for you. And Chinese farmer's like, well, maybe. A couple days later, the kid's out there breaking the horses, getting them trained up, and he falls off a horse and breaks his arm.
Ooh.
Exactly. The townspeople are like, oh my gosh, that's so bad. I can't believe your son fell off. Such a poor child that he fell off and broke his arm. Farmer goes, maybe. A couple weeks later, war breaks out. The army is going around to towns and collecting up sons, basically drafting. When they go to the town, they look at the son and they say, we can't take him. He's got a broken arm. It's no use to us. All the town people go, hooray for you. Your son broke his arm, and so he gets to stay here with you. Isn't that so great? Maybe.
Yeah.
So whether I get it done in the morning or the afternoon or the whatever, it's more important to me that just I get it done at some point. Is one better than the other? I don't know. Some days feels better to do the different way. Some days better in the afternoon. Some are better in the morning. Some days I go in the morning and I'm like, this is disgusting. I don't want to be here. So I don't know. I have a question. What are some of the ways that you guys hear people often describe their day? Like if you're like, oh, how's your day been? Or what you been up to? There's a couple that come to my mind. So
Always busy.
So busy.
Always.
What most people
Every time
say.
I ask people, they're like, oh,
Grinding.
Yeah.
Grinding.
Grinding.
Hard.
Yeah.
Meeting.
Or what day is it? I don't even know what day it is. Right? You get that. I've just had my head down. I don't even know what day it is. What day is it?
Yeah.
Check the calendar.
Yeah. Okay, so my two examples I was thinking of is there's people that will go through and they'll give me a list of every single thing they've done that day. And the most the most minute of details. They're like, yeah, I got up, did my morning routine, I read for a couple minutes, made some coffee, got out the door, got in my car, went to work. Once I was at work, I started talking to Kathy and Bethy and Aaron, and they make sure that every of the smallest details is laid out so the list is as big as possible. And some people are like, yeah, just been doing something, doing nothing. Once again, I don't know that either one's better than the other, but I'm like, I get kind of curious. I'm like, is that amount of detail to make it look like the list is bigger? That's what my brain goes to. I don't know but it's like.
I've actually been intentionally trying to make sure that the interactions that I have are so intimate with the people that I interact with that it's not totally public knowledge. Like, I've explored this idea of just being so, it's not secretive in a way, but it's like so intentional in meetings with people and connecting that I don't want to overly publicize like the communication or the contacts that I have with people.
Interesting. So like if somebody, is this going back to like if somebody asked you what you did today, you don't say I talked to this person and I talked to this person, I did this person. So
Yeah.
I want you to mention the conversations I've had.
Yeah.
Just let it roll. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I think there's a level of trust that's gained with people, but I think the people also feel like I'm more plugged in with them in that way. We all know the name droppers, right? Like, oh, yeah, talked to so-and-so and we did this and then I went over there with him and then I met her and then, you know, and it's like, I'm connected, right? What if you're just that person that like, you are Kevin Bacon, right? Like you are the 7 degrees of separation between everybody, but nobody knows.
That's cool. That's a cool way to be.
Yeah.
The problem is before that, you have to be the person who is 0 degrees, has nothing, and also is quiet about it, which is like, how do you build it up? But that's true. Very true.
You talked about intentional availability. The thing that is interesting to me is since I transitioned out of the corporate world and I do all the consulting work that I do now, I meet more interesting people now than I ever did before that are doing their own businesses and in transition. I meet a lot of people on the golf course that have like such unique stories and you know, they're in a journey in a season in life where they start opening up and sharing. And I'm always just like fascinated to see where people are in this time in the world, along with everything else going on, right? Like what their bubble is like, you know, that they're in. Because we all kind of exist in these little microcosms and little bubbles, right?
Yep.
But like, what's their influences? What are they impacted by? You know, as you start to peel back the onion with people, it's like, huh, okay. That's not my bubble, but that's interesting that that's the world that you live in within this.
Give an example.
I mean, I have an acquaintance that I've met through playing golf. He's a former military guy. We play golf. He's very passionate about golf, but then is also like an entrepreneur at the same time, right? And you wouldn't assume that this person is like who he is and the way that he presents like on the golf course and even through some of the conversation that we've had. And quite honestly, that him and I would even be people that would have connected without, you know, playing golf together.
Yeah.
But we're working on a business deal and a structure now, and it's like,
Cool.
it's not somebody I would have ever met before, right? But we started talking and kind of unpacked a bunch of things, found common ground, and, you know, have stayed connected, shared numbers.
Nice.
It's been cool.
There's an element of always, it's intentional availability, sort of like that. It's like, that's intentional curiosity in my mind, which is oftentimes we can look people up and down and be like, I kind of get their vibe. I know what they're about. And you never choose to dig deeper.
Yeah.
You know, that person doesn't dress like me, or that person says things that I don't believe, or whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah, you have to be intentionally curious. It's like the Ted Lasso thing. Don't be judgmental, be curious, or whatever.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it. And then you never know. If you act that way, you never know what's going to pop up. And usually people don't act that way unless it's out of necessity. Meaning, like, I started off as a financial advisor doing sales. Absolutely uncurious about anybody else in the world. Thought I was smart in all of them, didn't care, wasn't even worried about it.
Yeah.
Then it was like, oh yeah, well, I gotta like find some way to connect with people, so why don't I just like learn to learn about them? And that's where curiosity starts to open up. But it came out of desperation of like, I ain't need a paycheck. So, and then you just practice it and you learn it.
I like that. Dylan, I have a question for you. Who are the 2 people that you would say are most unlike you that you connect with the most? Maybe you don't have to name them by name, but maybe who they are and their characters.
Oh God.
Because I feel like so many times I have people that I'm friends with And I assume people in the outside world look at us like the ultimate odd couples, right? But like, we get along really, really well. People are like, so how did you two like come to be friends or connect?
Uh-huh.
I think that that's always a cool piece. But I wonder with other people, because you can see friendships, you see people out and about, and I'm like, wonder how they became friends, right? Like, what's their connection? Is it work? Is it community? Is it hobbies? Like,
I think they're all weird. Personally. It's hard for me to nail down too. Most of the people that I'm friends with are not directly through work or anything. They're just through happenstance and time. Time and chance. Happen to them all, right?
chance.
Yeah.
time and chance. I like that.
Happen to them all. So, I may have said this on a discussion we had in one of our other podcasts with all of us, but I think like given enough time between any two people, like you will learn to understand and appreciate each other. The challenge is like, you know, in that time between, it's like, can you maintain a communication or work hard enough on the communication in order to like overcome whatever those challenges or thought differences are. And,
Love that.
Yeah.
How about you, Brady?
I have one that comes to mind that's pretty interesting. Megan used to work at Earthbound.
I thought
know
you were
Earthbound?
going to say Megan.
No, Megan is the answer. Honestly, that's not a bad answer. That's funny. Megan used to work at Earthbound. Do you guys know Earthbound? Y'all know what it is?
I think so. Yeah.
I don't.
It's a weird, like, la spiritual store that's like sells
Okay.
incense and foo-foo.
Right up my alley.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Naturalistic clothes.
Ooh, yeah.
Hemp. Everything's probably hemp.
Oh,
Naturally
absolutely.
sourced.
Yeah. And Megan used to sell people on these things. That she has stories of upselling people that are so funny. Where she's like, "No, the spirits. You know, they said this. You know, they have little things that
The
like the
crystals
spirit
and-
decisions
yeah.
and crystals and things."
Oh,
like
wow,
that.
okay.
So, anyway, there's a guy that worked there with her, who we became friends with. He's a gay guy, married to an old military dude. They live down south now, but he's got some problems that happened in his life. He is intentionally scary. Like, he likes to not just like cross-dress, but to cross-dress and look scary. Like, he likes to scare people. It's very interesting. We go
Like Halloween all the time scary, or just like
sort
on
of,
the edge?
Sort of.
Like
Okay.
Joker
Like-
in the nurse costume.
Like,
That's scary.
Yeah.
That's scary.
Yeah.
like black dress, like kind of weird, freaky, spooky makeup, and like just
Okay.
scary, just generally scary.
Yeah.
Kind of Joker makeup sometimes. Anyway, really interesting cat. I mean, we talk to him. We go to the Hot Sauce Festival with him every year. And me and Megan are at the Hot Sauce Festival with them too. And so I was like, I hope somebody sees us and is like, oh, what is this? But they are, I mean, they're very interesting. But you can tell they've like had hurt in their life. And like they have hurt today. Like every year they expect me and Meg to cancel on the Hot Sauce Festival with them. And they've had friends that just like run away from them. And it's like, there's an element to this of like, they intentionally push you away to try and like see if you go away. And when you show up for them, they're like, I can't believe this. Wow.
Yeah.
But they're very interesting characters, to say the least. And I would say, without a doubt, they are the most opposite of me and Megan that I can think of or imagine. But we still see them.
It's awesome.
Yeah. What about you?
I mean, I think, my business partner, Alex, I mean, he's a small Indian fellow from Kerala, India. We travel together, spend a lot of time together. People often are like, How do you
Where
two
did y'all meet?
like? How'd you meet? How'd you get along? How'd you
bully
become
you, or-
friends? Yeah. The one thing that I appreciate about him is, he's a previous soccer player. I think he told me like they used to call him like a pumpkin on a stick or something. Like literally, he was so small that
Like a big head and then just
yeah, he just had he had the
I
same
see.
size head when he was a kid, and was like 100 pounds, like until he graduated from high school or something like
Wow.
that. Like when he went to college, people were like,
You look off.
yeah, like, do you belong here? Are you old enough to like be here? Like always,
That's funny.
looked really young. And so, we'll travel to places and stuff and be hanging out. And the one thing that I think is so funny about him is that he's an absolute sports fanatic. Like statistics and everything, specifically football, which is what we really get along about, right? Me previously playing, but he calls me like 2 weeks ago. And my wife's like, who are you talking to? It's like 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. And he's wanting to get ideas because he has a college football, fantasy football league that he plays in. It's only Power 5 college football. And he's like, everybody goes with the SEC, and being here in Texas, it's Big 10, Big 12 country. But like, I need some Pac-12 love. I need to figure out who's the guy that nobody knows about at Stanford or Washington or Oregon State. And I'm like, this is before the rankings, and I'm like, University of Washington's going to be really good. He's like, really? And I'm like, they got a dude at quarterback. They got all these receivers. And he's like, just give me names. Like he's taking down names, right? So he goes to his draft. And he's drafting guys, and they've been in this league for 10 years or something with all of his buddies. And his buddies are like, who are these guys on paper? And I'm like, just trust me, Get a call from him Saturday night after the first week, and he's like, bro, yes! Ah! I hear him like cheering, Like two guys from University of Washington, they both had like 200 yards receiving and all these touchdowns.
100%.
It just went off, and he's like, I'm the guy in this league that's like benefiting from you having some internal knowledge. So
Yeah.
we always laugh about that, but we're kind of the odd couple everywhere.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, so
Okay.
Alex was getting all pumped up because his guys were.
All pumped up. His guys are going great.
Yeah.
And it's just this thing we laugh about. So even, on Saturdays, I get calls from him around college football, and he's like unpacking all these narratives that are, set up either for games or what's going on. He's like the furthest that you would think from being like a college
Hyped
football
up about
fan.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Fanatic fan anywhere he goes to. He came to my son's football
Yeah.
Friday night football game a couple weeks ago, and he's
Yeah.
like, this is freaking amazing.
He loves football.
Loved it. My wife was like, are you sure he wants to come? Like, is he that big of a football fan? Even she was questioning. She's like, he's like 5'0" nothing, 100 and something pounds. Like, is he really into football? And he's like, yeah, like yelling louder than most of the parents there. So
That is very funny.
yeah, that's my odd couple friend.
Poor guy probably has to stay up until 12, 1 a.m. on Saturdays watching those games, but
Gets it all in.
gets it all in.
Yeah, yeah,
That's cool, man. That's very cool.
it is.
There's something about cultivating relationships around you with people that have different domains of expertise than what you do. That's just super powerful.
Yeah.
Like, it's cool to be able to pick up the phone and call somebody that knows just a totally different realm than what you know and get advice and information. That's how you get ahead.
They'll keep you out of the echo chamber too.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah, if you just line all the people with similar mindsets together, and they'll all yell, and they'll be like, "Oh man, it all sounds like what I'm saying, so it must be right."
Groupthink. I mean, I think that's what's killing companies is hire from the same talent pools, hire from the same areas. Everybody has a similar thought process. Nobody goes against the grain, plays the devil's advocate, brings new ideas. You get comfortable in the way that meetings go, the natural cadence.
How do you think that plays in cultural development? You do some
Yeah.
of this work in D&I.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how to formulate it. Like, does I feel like you could easily stray off cultural development and get into like conformity development, which is just like, hey, we're all going to drink the Kool-Aid and we're all going to wear purple on Thursdays and we're all going to say yes at the same time in meetings and say no about the same things, and we'll never disagree, and it'll all be like we're in the Lollipop Guild, and I'm just going to keep ranting until I run out of breath. But yeah.
Conformity bias is a real thing, right? Because especially in organizations, you feel like if there is a strong culture, which I think a lot of companies, post-pandemic have struggled to establish and really solidify what their cultural, ethos are, what their direction is. But I think the conformity bias is the idea that I have to conform to the norms of what I see organizationally, right? So this plays out in meetings. Like everybody travels to a meeting place. You're going to Denver, Dallas, whatever the city may be, right? Meeting organizers have an agenda that they want you to do, but there's also those gaps in times, right? Where, maybe people go down to the lobby bar. If it's in the summer, some people may be pool people. They live in northern Wisconsin or northern New York. They don't get the sun. So they're like, hey, I'm going to go down and do this while I'm on this trip or whatever. But you see these kind of group leaders within the organization lead people, and you see people that are not natural leaders start to follow really quickly, right? They feel like they have to conform socially to what's going on. And I think that just continues to perpetuate a sense of people not feeling like they can bring their individual selves into the organization and ultimately sprinkle a little bit of who they are or what they're into the conversation. It happens all the time.
Okay.
What's interesting is you use the term strong culture. I think that has a minute difference from good culture. What you just described is a strong culture. People are going to fit into this culture is palpable, and people will fit in line whenever they come in, wherever their personality sits. If they're one of those reserved people, they're fitting in line in it. It's strong. It's a strong culture, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's good. I think I have an interesting thought on building cultures, and it's really hard to build companies this way, which is why I don't think people do it. I'm all about start small. We've talked about before, do it. If you can do it once, you can do it over and over and over again. Like a way to appropriately scale. So let's say I'm going to start an oil company in Midland, Texas. Conventional wisdom now, call it MBA wisdom, tells you to source talent from Houston, from Dallas, from East Texas. Get all the top dogs, get them all, and bring them over there to Midland. Guy from East Texas never been to Midland before. He doesn't know what Jorge's is. He's never been to Jorge's, right? He's not part of the boys club.
Sure.
He's not going to fit into the culture.
Yeah.
It's almost like I wonder where the trade-off is, where you take less talented, less educated individuals that are from Midland to start your new company in Midland. And then as you expand from there, let's say you want to open up a branch in, I don't know, let's say you want to go to Houston. Okay, open up a branch in Houston and hire from Houston. Open up a branch in Beaumont and hire from Beaumont. Like, you kind of almost absolve the organization into the culture that it's built in. Don't try and fight the forces. You're fighting the forces.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I think it's really smart. So when I come in and I start working with companies, the first thing that I tell them is like, for me to come in, whether it's professional development, DEIB, I'm doing cultural development for them, managing leaders. Ultimately, it would be better for me to identify somebody within your organization, within your culture, and develop them to be a leader or step into this role that you're consulting with me to do right now, than me being the figurehead leading that. Because that person will garner more trust. They've got their ear to the street, right? They know what's going on, and they have a vested interest in the community, in the workplace and in the greater community around them.
Yeah.
It's the first thing that I tell everybody that I work with. Now, it's going to take us a while to get there and unpack that and identify who that person is. That person's going to rise to the top, similar to the cream, reference earlier. Like they will rise.
We were talking about milk for a reason.
There it is.
That's true. That's true.
There it is.
But I think that takes an understanding of what they're grounded in, but also people self-select into those roles when they see opportunities arise. And I think strong companies with good cultures, not just strong cultures, but good cultures, identify those people and nurture it, right? And I think that's what equitable opportunities really look like. It's the opportunity for somebody who may not already have it on their resume, but are passionate about it and probably have a lot of the skill set to do the job, but creating an opportunity for them to actually figure it out before they need to be, tasked with the role, or before they're, crowned into the role.
Yeah, makes sense. I have a buddy who I just have these kind of conversations with every week. And at one point we had talked about the detriment of people leaving their communities. So his girlfriend is in international relations and all this stuff, and she noticed a pattern of people in college have like the higher rates of mental distress, mental illness.
Yeah.
And she was like, it's obvious. It's because you took them away from all their friends and family and put them somewhere all by themselves, where now they have to try and acclimate and grow into a new culture. And then you do that again whenever they move away to go work somewhere.
Sure.
But I wonder, so let's talk about the person you're talking about who has the strong personality, the strong culture, exactly what you want. Let's say they live in Oregon and your business is in Dallas. When you move them from Oregon to Dallas, I am of the belief that you've taken something from them. Like they might still be strong personality, but they would be much stronger if you brought the business to them. So satellite in Oregon rather than human capital to you. And I don't know what the cost difference ends up being there, but I bet there's intangible costs of the loss of their productivity, the loss of what they could actually grow into whenever you take them away from the community they grew up in. And a good example of that actually is Dylan. Dylan's so freaking strong because he's been in his community. He's been in Spicewood for how long?
20 years. I have a plant metaphor.
Yeah, go for it.
Since we talk about growth a lot and talk about growing in your community and your people and all that, let's go plants. Let's say that there is an awesome oak tree in Oregon that you just love. It's been there for 30 years. It's big, it provides shade, it does all these great things. Mm-hmm. And you're like, man, I want to bring that, I want to have that here in Texas. You have two options. It's like you can try to excavate the tree and pick it up and bring it to Texas. Huge risk. Mm-hmm. You'll probably die. Or you can bring the seed of that tree. I'm using the seed as a metaphor to just the person. Just bring just that person here and plant it. And it'll grow to be the big tree. It's got the same genetic material. It's still going to take 30 years to be that big, well-rooted tree. And so you're talking about moving things around. It's like, how do you get to be a big tree? You stay in the same place for a really long time.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I don't know if that's always good, though. I love the metaphor and I love the direction that you're going with this, but I think that we're missing one thing, which is there's an evolution to just about everything that we do in who we are, right? I'm not saying starting from evolution, but we all evolve in some way and manner. And I think staying in the same ecosystem around you doesn't allow you to grow at the rate that you might if you're transplanted out of that ecosystem for a period of time and then potentially drop back in there, right? So
Very fair.
So to your college analogy, right? Like, I think when you go away to college, specifically for me, I left the West Coast and went to college in the Midwest. The rate of change and the way that I had to adapt to the culture of the Midwest was significant, right? And it was actually slowing down in a lot of ways, learning how to not be in a hurry, not have relationships that are just transactional. Like my neighbor, when I lived in the Midwest, he's a guy who'd been in that town for 30-something years, worked at Pella Windows, genuinely was one of the most impactful people when I was in college, when I lived off campus. Guy taught me how to plug in my car battery so it didn't freeze, right? Like just stuff about the Midwest that a West Coast guy growing up in Los Angeles and Oregon wouldn't have known. Like I just wouldn't have known it, right? And so I think it helped round me a lot in who I was. So then when I was transplanted back into the area that I was in, I took a lot of those skills or understandings. The one thing that I talk about a lot that I think most people don't is emotional intelligence. And I think that's really where it refines you as an individual, specifically with relationships. I think when you're taken out of your current ecosystem, you're dropped in somewhere else, you tend to be somebody who's much more aware of your surroundings than when you're super comfortable. You've been there, you've driven all the streets, you know everybody, you know the restaurants, the climate, you know, you're just at a place of total comfort, right? Almost to the point where you could probably jump in the car and drive somewhere and forget about how you even got there. You're just like, oh, I'm here because it's on autopilot, right? Versus when you go to a different place, you're not familiar, you're on the maps, you're looking around, you're looking at
You're
street
alert.
signs, you're alert, you're picking up everything. And I think we've lost this sense of awareness to where we're just plugged into what's actually around us and not distracted by all the other things that are around. So I would challenge it and say that I think when you're plucked out of your comfort zone or your ecosystem and you're put into another area, the level of growth in terms of EQ, you know, emotional intelligence, is probably more rapid than any other time
Very interesting.
in your life.
I agree with that.
I would too. It's very
Yeah.
interesting. It's almost like that pressure or disruption makes you grow. It's anti-fragile. You
Yeah.
grow from the chaos.
Yeah. We may have been talking about two different kinds of growth. I'm just talking about community growth, and you're talking about personal growth. I think, maybe.
Yeah,
Maybe.
totally.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, like, in my case, it's like, to your point, I just happen to know a lot of people that are around here. And then I also, at the same time, being in the same area, I didn't know you guys 2 years ago. I
Yep.
mean, not really. Not at all. Definitely didn't think I'd be spending most of my like
Friday.
exploratory thought life doing this. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Didn't live here 2 years ago or 3 years ago.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, so in that sense,
So
yeah,
in practice,
my tree,
it's
my
worked out.
tree is more about my tree metaphor is more about community than it is
I
personal
love
growth.
that. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that I can co-sign for.
Okay.
I'm with that.
Cool. So there we go. See?
Yeah, we agree on both
There
sides.
was two thoughts. We were like, oh, there's something missing in the middle. Boom. That's what I thought. So I was trying to get to earlier. Just give something enough time and spend the thought on it, and you'll find where, like, oh, this code's here, and all of a sudden it's like, boop.
That's so good.
I hope that.
So you've tied in milk, you've tied in time. It just all connects.
It does. It
milk,
all
time,
connects.
trees. Come on.
Can we talk about the name Disruptive Minds?
Sure.
Yeah.
I wanted to know the origin of that because I was sharing the pod with somebody the other day and they were like, what's this really about? Like, where did it come from? And I thought about, again, individually, each one of us, you know, me being able to be a guest on here, but also, like, what was the brain trust of this? Because I know that there's probably a backstory.
Let's go 2 questions. First question is, what does it mean to you? Second question would be, what's been the most disruptive thing to your mind?
Ooh.
Or what would be the origin of your disruption? Any disruption in your mind? Either one.
You're pointing that towards me?
Yeah.
Yeah, so one, like when you hear disruptive mind, what do you think?
I think...
What was your answer?
What'd you say?
What was your answer? That's another good way to say it.
Oh, yeah, or, what'd you tell that person?
What'd you tell him?
Yeah.
I said this is a group of gents that are hyper aware of thought and processing information and the way that information is either consumed or communicated. And so I kind of put our personalities out there in the way that I perceive them to be, and then tried to weave in what I think is really this kind of cool symbiosis of how all of our personalities and our thought processes really meld, although they're all individually different in nature, right? And our sources of information are different, but it's kind of this collaboration of thought and then unpacking what that thought actually means and how it relates to the greater communities around us.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so the second question, disruptive. What have you, from what you've seen or from our conversations, what have you ever walked away with that you've been like, I think differently about that?
Well, it goes back to the idea of change management and the complexity of your mind. And I think what this pod does is it challenges your ability to think in a complex manner. So I think you guys take simple concepts or simple ideas or simple interactions and look at them in a very granular way. And I think it allows people to go, what do I actually think about that? So it disrupts our natural way of thinking because there's a lot of different ideas that are really thrown out for them to chew on and try to figure out for themselves where they align with the ideas that have been communicated or talked about.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Was that the intent?
I mean, that's pretty close. Our tagline is exploring life through irreverence.
Okay.
So irreverence, or like the lack of respect, not like disrespect, but it's like, I'm not going to hold this as like an absolute value or an absolutely true thing. Or just here in this moment, we were exploring this metaphor I had about trees.
Yeah.
And disruption came where I was like, I actually need to be more specific to myself and other people when I tell this, because it actually only applies to a very specific kind of story, which is about community. And it's not about like personal growth. You should definitely be getting uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so every time I tell that metaphor, it's like, if I'm not specifying that, I'm gonna let people think like, they're gonna grow everything by just like being in the same spot and it's like, that's not true.
Cool.
And so, yeah, there was a disruption right there. And I was like, let's pull that in. Okay. So it's a place to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, we had covered an episode on it in the second episode, but the idea is, at least in my mind, the idea is discovering or almost observing life through irreverence was about like, stop taking things at face value.
Ooh.
That's really what it is.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, when somebody tells you something, use your head and think about it. Don't just like, yeah, yes. We've been lulled into a state of compliance for everything from social media, where we see something on social media because it's on social media and got a bunch of likes, it's true. And nobody second guesses anything. And so I have a lot of origin stories for it, but mostly where I see it now is like, somebody will show me something on social media, like Megan, for example, will show me something, and automatically when she shows it to me, I'm like, no, that's fake. like that's my default response is like, no, that's fake. Nah, that ain't real.
I may or may not have had a few conversations with my wife that sound exactly like that.
Really?
I'm like, it's totally fake. She's like, no, really?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
much better for it to turn out to be real later and like be like, okay, than for you to just like immediately accept everything.
Yeah.
So it was really about that, and the exploration, the questions that we try to get to here are all about like, whenever I always had this thing that I told my sister, which was question everything, and I don't think that, I don't know if I stand by it or not. I may grow out of that someday, but as of right now, I still question everything. Like there's nothing that people tell me or have conversations with me about that I don't question, and it's. When people talk to me, they tell me, "Oh, wow, you just know so much about a bunch of different things." And it's not like I just learned that. Like it's not like that I just made that stuff up. It's because when people talk to me, I ask a ton of questions. And I go, I don't know if I think that's true. Tell me more about that. And so it adds to your repertoire, and it makes you like, that's what makes you a disruptive mind. You become a disruptive mind through questioning and that irreverence and that inability to take things at face value.
So I have a question that I'm dying to ask both of you guys based on that.
Yeah.
Do you see the threat level of you being in the room and conversations rising because of your want to question?
The threat is in like, I'm threatening to people's conversations or their thoughts
Or their ideology? Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I like to be quiet, because I'm like, I'll let you talk.
Yeah.
I'll let you say your stuff. Like, it'll generally take me a long time to hear what you believe and not just hear what you're saying at the moment.
Ooh.
And so after I've heard it for a while, then I might interject a little bit, but yeah.
Do you realize how profound that just was in a business context? It'll take me a long time to hear what you believe and not just what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like that is such a good nugget, right? To apply. Because how many times do you talk to people and you're like, wah, wah, wah. You don't believe that. You're just talking because that's what your canned answer or what you think people
Yep.
want to hear you say, right? And when you said that to me, I was like professional coaching, the stuff that I do in professional development and DEI work, I'm like, it takes a long time to get to people's beliefs. People don't want to share that.
Yeah. That's exactly right. Yep.
So I spend a lot of time like pulling on the thread for you to just be candid and tell me what you actually believe, right?
Yeah.
Versus
What's
Either what-
scripted or what's expected or
or what you think I want to hear you say.
that's it. Yeah. The
Yeah.
expected thing. Yeah.
That's really good, Dylan.
That's interesting.
That's really good.
I can tell you that I don't feel that way anymore. I had a conversation with Megan a long time ago. Maybe y'all have heard this, maybe you haven't. We were driving in the car on 360. She had some idea, and I was just peppering her with questions. And she looked at me and she said, "This is why nobody likes you." And I was like, "What?"
Ooh.
She was like, "Nobody likes you. You make everybody feel small. You ask everybody too many questions. You know, yada yada yada." And like she had said things like that before, and I just like, whatever, you're lying, right? And this is
Yeah.
a moment, this is in COVID, and we have some friends that live in Austin, and they don't like really hanging out with us anymore. And he was a good friend from college, and you know, all of a sudden it just like hit me. I started doing some reflecting, and I was like, yeah, like I do this too much. Like I can see it, and it turned out to be true. Nobody wanted to be my friend. Nobody wanted to talk to me because if you said anything to me, anything, well, how about this? How about this? What about this? Have you thought about this? You know, do you know about this? What about this? And it was just annoying to people. Like people just hated it. So it was a threat then. Like people avoided me because they didn't want to deal with me.
When we talked about manipulation a while back,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and how I said people don't like you putting your hands on their thoughts.
Yeah, that's exactly
Especially
right.
if it's their ones that they trust. They're
yeah,
like, I
especially
trust
when you
these.
twist them up in knots.
Yeah.
You get them-
Oh,
And so
another just
I think like
mic drop,
Yeah.
Jim.
you can't just
People
go in
don't want you
and,
putting your hands on their thoughts.
yeah,
That's it.
and you do it too often or too aggressively or without authority, and it's just they're like,
Yep.
ugh, get away! I don't like you.
Yeah.
Get back. It's defense. It's for safety generally, I would say, because they're like,
It is.
no,
Yeah.
I need these things. These are what I use.
When you twist them up, you hurt them.
Are those the things that they believe, or are those the things that are the canned answered?
Well, the worst is whenever it is what they believe.
Your
and you
canned
twist
answer
them up.
can be what you believe, but it's not very stable.
Especially if it's like a social media answer, something you got from social media, and it is what you believe. It's maybe the only thing you've been exposed to, and you wrap them up, and then whenever they express a contradiction, they don't like you anymore. When your questions lead to that.
This is so fascinating because I think the idea of active listening means that you're asking questions to pull more information out, right?
Yes.
And I think I told you guys this maybe on the first one, but like I try not to have any relationships anymore that are surface level. Like if people are okay just being on the surface, I'm like,
Giving you the canned answers.
I'm out. I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, nice to meet you. If you're not willing to go deeper, with that iceberg analogy, right? Like 90% of an iceberg is underneath the water. Like I want to get into that stuff that makes you who you are, that you share your beliefs that are that are not the canned answered, but more candor and honesty about where you come from, right? What your journey has been, what your story is, what you believe in, what you're excited about in the future. All those things to me are more interesting than the 5 or 6 talking points that are like, what you've put up for everyone. So in a way, I appreciate the idea of what you guys are both saying, which is in a way, to really be a good partner in a friendship relationship, like asking questions is a valuable thing because I'm trying to learn more. And it actually took me a while to understand that because my wife used to kind of pepper me at times and being like, so what do you think about that? Oh, how did that make you feel? Well, what do you think the next step is? And I'm like, babe, that's a lot right there, you know? And she's like, I'm just trying to understand like what you really think about it. And I used to take offense to that. And now I'm like, she doesn't ask me about this. And so I've come back and I ask her more, and then I see that she's willing to ask more about it. But she's a really good listener. She's actually probably one of the best people I know outside of you two in terms of asking the question to people. And I will watch her have a conversation with somebody and she'll ask 6 questions. That person will never ask a question back to her.
Yeah. That's the best way to be in a conversation.
And she'll go, I don't have a ton of really close friends. I have acquaintances, but the people that she's close with do the same thing. They ask those questions back.
Yep.
Right.
That's exactly right. I have 3 people that do it. That's it. You know?
Yeah.
You got 3 people, I don't know how many Dylan has, that in a conversation, you're one of them that in a conversation will engage like that, rather than just like let you answer, ask questions and
Sure.
answer. It's tough to find, but those are the disruptive minds. Those are the people who come to answers after many, many questions that change things.
I love it.
So I'll give you the example, and you got to give us a quick story.
Okay.
This will probably round us up. So I think episode 2, we did like origins of disruption.
Yep.
So my example was, I was a little kid, probably like 3rd or 4th grade, and I could see the property that we lived in, like I could see my parents would pull in, and there was enough time between the time they'd pull in and make it to the house where I could adjust for whatever was happening.
Sure.
And so this time I was like, all right, I'm gonna go hide outside, and I'm gonna just like, I'm not gonna sit like anywhere crazy, like obscure, or like really hide myself, but I'm just gonna get where like I might be out of sight, because it was kind of dark. And so I'm sitting, and I'm not covered by anything, and my parents walk right by me without me being covered at all. And I stand up, and I'm like, surprise, and oh God, like they freak out and go nuts. And that was a little early sign to me that like there's a lot going on right around me that may not be immediately in my sight or immediately just like handed to me. And so that was a disruptive thought that entered early on, where I was like, oh, there's probably more going on. There's probably something else
What's
happening.
hiding in plain sight?
There's probably something right over there. And it's like, what's in plain sight? And so you got like a disruptive origin story like that, or something that just made you think like, oh wow, there's a lot more going on here. That was like,
Yeah, I mean, I think the first time that I really had that, I was in the 5th grade or 4th grade. We lived in Washington, D.C., and it was around this time of year, around Halloween and stuff. We lived with my mom's boyfriend in this brownstone in D.C. and his entire family. So there was like 12 people that lived in the house. We lived in the basement. So it was 3 stories, they're stacked up. His brother's wife, they had a kid. His parents lived on the top floor. And then we lived there with my 2 other brothers. So I'm the youngest of 3, my mom and my mom's boyfriend. My mom worked graveyard. So we were all kind of hanging out. We go to bed. I wake up and there's smoke everywhere in our house. And I'm like in the 4th grade, little whitey tighties on, and like running out of this house, smoke everywhere, house is on fire, like legitimately house is on fire. So my mom's boyfriend's dad was a very overweight guy, and he rarely ever came out of the room and never came downstairs. And he was actually the person who was like shuttling us out of the front door. Like I hadn't seen this guy in probably a month. Before that, like he just never came out of the room, right? Wow. And so he helped us get out. And at that time, like we lived in a neighborhood, it was during the crack epidemic, like Marion Barry was mayor, and it was like murder capital of the world in DC, but like we lived in this small community right outside of Union Station, and we go through this traumatic event, right? Well, my mom worked graveyard, she wasn't there. And so I ended up getting transported with the brother of my mom's boyfriend who ended up having like really bad 3rd-degree burns. And I was in the ambulance with him on the way. I had smoke inhalation and everything, so they transported us there. And I remember getting there, and all these nurses were kind of helping him to get off and me. And then I just remember like trying to figure out where my mom was or if my mom would be notified or whatever to come. Wrap up the story, she found me like in the morning, found out that the house had burned down, everybody was kind of displaced. But that was the first time that I was like, there's so many moving pieces in terms of your community and people providing and everybody in your home, right? That we just kind of lived in it, never thought that like it could be disrupted. We just kind of went through life. And that was the first real traumatic incident where you're like, people do care about where you're at, and you're on people's radar. My mom was like, we scoured through all these hospitals to try to find you, and where they took you in the ambulance because it wasn't clear because they were still trying to put the house out and all these things. Wow. And so I would say that that's the first time where I realized that like disruption was real, right? And so we ended up moving a couple of times within 3 months before we were like settled back in Oregon. We moved to Las Vegas. We lived in like a motel with my mom's sister, which was really bad. And then we ended up landing with my grandmother in Oregon. That's who we lived with after that.
That incident initiated all of those moves?
It did. Wow. Yeah. And it was kind of this, this really disruptive, people
Your life
would say,
changed after that. Like you remember that night and then things moved.
Yeah, vividly. Like everything about it I can tell you. And my brother and I, we talk about it often, but we recount that story like almost identically the same way, right? And it's one of those things that even now, 35 years later, when we talk about it, we kind of point back to that moment of being like a different path for us in terms of sticking together, in terms of what our relationship is like, right? And just having a sense of there's more going on around you, So when I hear the idea of disruption, I think it's uncomfortable at first, when things are disrupted, just like even your thoughts or what you said, putting your hands on people's thoughts. But ultimately, there's always a way for you to work through disruption to be better suited for what's going to come after that.
That's the idea.
Yeah. And that's the cool thing I like about this, right? It's like you're going to think about your thoughts after hearing the things that we talk about. I go home and I'm like, I just want to shoot it again, right? I want to spend more time, right, on this because it makes you think about the things that you believe, but also the things that you hear, and really take it through this like distilling process, right? Of filtering it out and trying to figure out like the validation for you in it. And it's not that you're like such a pessimist that you don't believe anything could be true, but like you want to get to the root of like what's going on or the idea or the theory of something.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's the time we got.
Thanks for having me.
That's it. Thanks, Jimmy.
Awesome.
Good.
It's fun.
Seriously. It's good stuff.
Real cherry.
Yeah. So now as soon as I get out of here, guys, I'm gonna go to this one thing, and then I'm gonna meet this one person. I'm gonna go to this other place, and we're gonna do this stuff, and then I'm just messing with it. Let me give you this list.